Patreon.com/the Walk-Off Podcast. $4 a month gets you in there.
So Chavez Young, friend of the show here, wonderful young man, great human.
Absolutely.
From the Bahamas. Wish him all the best. Played AAA Buffalo with the Bisons last year. He was moved yesterday morning for Zach Thompson. Obviously, this is a depth pitching move. You see it all the time. He's a guy with options. They can yo-yo up and down. And you mentioned just recently that this front office has been acquiring depth at a higher rate than previous years. Is this learning from past mistakes? Like, why do you think the focus has shifted a little more intently on beefing up Plan B?
Okay, so let's look at that. All you have to do to really sort of grasp some of the motivation at this is think back to last September, where they had 3 bullpen games, I think a span of 14, 15 days in September, which, if you're a non-contender, isn't ideal. But if you're chasing a postseason spot, isn't really not ideal, right? And so, you don't want to leave yourself in that spot. The Blue Jays understood they were in a very vulnerable position. They didn't, circumstances took them there. And one of the calculations they made last year was that between Anthony Kay and Thomas Hatch and Bowden Francis and a couple of the other bodies that were around at the time, they would be covered. They'd be, they were 7, 8, 9 deep, and they'd be able to get through things. But Kay was hurt and underperformed. Bowden Francis didn't perform. Thomas Hatch didn't perform. A lot of their contingencies fell apart on them, and that left them in a position where they were scrambling. And and talking to some people during the season, that they kind of said, coming out of the lockout, it was just so crazy. You had this frenzy, basically 50% of the baseball offseason occurred within a 2-week span. Coming out of the agreement, spring training camps are starting up, and the priority was okay, let's take care of the big league side. The Blue Jays were very active. They added Kikuchi, they added Chapman, they traded Grichuk for Tapia. Yeah, they had a handful of things that were happening within a short span. And then this was an area that, if they'd had maybe a bit more time to kind of kick around, would have said, you know what, let's insulate this a little bit more. And that didn't happen. And obviously we understand the consequences and the fallout from that. And so, the Zach Thompson, the Drew Hutchison signing, some of the, the other buildup that they've tried to do is just essentially adding more insulation to this roster. And this is the kind of thing that all teams do, the good teams do. And you're just trying to create as much surplus as you can around the roster, because over the course of the season, you're going to need some of it. And look, if everything goes to plan and nobody gets hurt and all that stuff, great. But you have it, but it's there sort of like a fire extinguisher, break in case of emergency. If you need to use it, then it's there. And if it's not there when you need it, then you're in some trouble.
Well, you only need to take a quick look at how many pitchers started games for this team over the last couple of years to realize that.
Yeah. And they've been a good team for that during that time too, right? So, look, the best case scenario is that they're getting 30 starts each from Barrios, Manoah, Bassett, and Gosman, and one of Kikuchi or Mitch White figures it out and can ride them in the rotation. But the reality is that's probably not going to happen, and they're going to need people to pop in at different spots. And you're not ready to count on, say, a Ricky Tiedemann or a Hayden Younger or someone like that just yet. You want to have a Drew Hutchison or Zach Thompson around just to kind of fill in some space and cover some innings and let the offense do the heavy lifting on that day.
All right, Shi, we won't keep you any longer. We love talking Blue Jays and baseball with you. Thank you so much for coming back on the show, my man. All the best in 2023. And darn well we'll bug you again down the road to come back on. So thanks again, man.
Yeah, no worries.